G'day, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the legality of remote ID spoofing, because a lot of people are talking about it. Can you spoof a remote ID signal without getting into trouble with the law? Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. I don't even have a fancy wig. But I'm going to try and interpret the rules, the law in relation to this. So this is not advice. Don't take this as being gospel. This is just one person's opinion based on what I'm going to go over with you in the federal or the Code of Federal Regulations. Now, I'll put a link to this document in the description of the video so you can go and check it out for yourself. But this is this Title 47, Part 18 refers to the rules regarding broadcasts on the ISM band. It defines the ISM band. ISM stands for Industrial, Scientific and Medical Equipment. And these are parts of the radio frequency spectrum that have been set aside for license-free operation. Well, it's not license-free, it's implied license. You don't have to go and get special permission to use these frequencies, so long as you use compliant equipment that passes all the technical specifications, and so long as you operate in accordance with a few basic rules and restrictions, you can use the ISM band for almost anything you like. So we're going to look at this and see how spoofing fits into the rules surrounding ISM use, because remote ID is done on ISM bands, either on the 5 gigahertz ISM band with Bluetooth or on the 2.4 gigahertz band with Wi-Fi. So let's have a look at what it says here. And to start off, we need to define one crucial thing, and that is interference, because it's against the rules to interfere with any other legitimate user of the band. And that is what the authorities would be arguing if you used spoofing to create ghost drones. So let's see what the definition of harmful interference is. Here we go. Definition B, harmful interference. It says interference which endangers the functioning of a radio navigation service or of other safety services, or seriously degrades, obstructs, or repeatedly interrupts a radio communication service operating in accordance with this chapter. So this is where they'll get you. If you're going to spoof remote ID broadcasts, they will use this definition, because if we go further down the page, section 18.111 general operating conditions state that subject to the exceptions in paragraph C and D of this section, and irrespective of whether the equipment otherwise complies with the rules, the operator of ISM equipment that causes harmful interference to any authorized radio service shall promptly take whatever steps may be necessary to eliminate this interference. But basically what they're saying is, you're not allowed to interfere with other users who are legitimately using the band. And if you are interfering, you've got to stop. So let's go back to that definition of harmful interference. If we examine this in more detail, it says it's interference which endangers the functioning of a radio navigation service. Well, the remote ID is not a radio navigation service. It is solely for security, we're told. Nothing to do with safety, it's security. It enables law enforcement to associate an operator with a drone and locate the position of the drone and the operator. So it's not safety as such, it is security. So it doesn't qualify under that. And then of other safety services, well, it's not a safety service. But this is the bit that will get you. Or seriously degrades, obstructs, or repeatedly interrupts a radio communication service operating in accordance with the rules. So remote ID is operating in accordance with the rules. And spoofing, it could be argued by prosecution, degrades and obstructs the remote ID service. Now, if you've got one drone with one broadcast remote ID signal and it appears on the app, that's fine. If suddenly there are 16 spoof ghost drones, that is kind of obstructing the purpose of remote ID, and it's degrading the effectiveness of the service, because suddenly the legitimate drone is lost in a sea of ghost drones. So yeah, they could quite reasonably argue that this degrades and obstructs the legitimate remote ID service. That's where they get you, I believe, in a court of law. They'd say, sorry, but you have violated this. You are now in trouble. Here's your fine, go to jail, whatever. So if you are going to spoof, be aware you're probably breaking the law. And the FCC is a pretty powerful government department, more powerful than the FAA in many cases. Remember, the FCC issued, was it $15 million fines against Hobby King for selling FPV gear that wasn't certified, didn't operate on the right power levels and the right frequencies. So you don't want to get on the wrong side of the FCC. So yeah, having determined, therefore, that spoofing is probably illegal, the next question is, how likely are you to get caught if you do it? Well, if you go and buy a store-bought remote ID module, a little thing like this, and you go and throw it in the long grass at the end of a runway at an airfield, you're probably going to get caught, and it probably won't be very effective because the little store-bought modules broadcast their own position. So it's pretty easy and quick to track down and turn off or destroy one of these modules if it is causing an issue at an airport. Also, if you're going to drive past an airport and throw a handful of these out the window as you do, you're probably going to be caught on CCTV. They'll trace your license number back to you and you will be in trouble. So those approaches probably not going to be a good idea. However, there are other ways of doing it. We've got to look at what a potential bad actor might do to use remote ID to disrupt the legitimate operation of an airport. First thing they might do is build their own spoofing gear. Instead of just going and buying one of these for $50, yeah, right, they may decide, yeah, we're going to build our own. And it's not hard. In fact, if we go online, we go to GitHub, here it is. Remote ID spoofer. It's a project on GitHub. And here's the results. Look at all the ghost drones on that screen there. It'll do that. And all you need is an Arduino and a little bit of other stuff, perhaps, I don't know, Bluetooth or a remote or a Wi-Fi module, I'm not sure. But it is so simple. Anyone could download the code and do it. This creates 16 fake drones broadcasting remote ID, all flying in random directions around a particular GPS location. Now, if you're going to do this, you could also build in a delayed fuse. So you might take this and secrete it somewhere in the vicinity of an airport, on top of a building, down a drain pipe, somewhere where it's not going to be easily found, and then have it automatically activate after 12 hours, 24 hours, a week. And so long after you've disappeared, then it becomes active. So it's much harder for anyone to find the device. It doesn't broadcast its own position. Unlike one of these, it doesn't broadcast its own position. It only broadcasts the position of the ghost drones and the fictitious pilots. Makes it much harder for authorities to track down the spoofing unit and to disable it, and also to trace it back to the person that put it in there. In theory, someone with a drone that doesn't have remote ID fitted could locate one of these spoofing units high on top of a building, in a tree, on a flagpole, in a non-accessible place, so that even when they knew the rough area, it'd be very, very difficult, firstly, to locate it, and secondly, to deactivate or remove it. It becomes a major, major problem. But I think the real risk for spoofing comes from the fact that if you build your own spoofing equipment, you add a little RF amplifier, you can buy them on AliExpress, and you put a high gain antenna, like a homemade helical, you can broadcast a spoofing signal from many, many miles away. From 15 miles away from an international airport, you could broadcast a spoofing signal that effectively created a cluster of drones at the end of the runway. And you're 15 miles away. And there's no way they're going to catch you, because you would do it for 10 minutes, then you'd shift location. Do it for 10 minutes, shift location. And even if they're trying to triangulate on the signal itself, by the time they reach you, you've gone. This could be done off and on over a prolonged period, completely disrupting the operation of any significant airport. And I don't think that's what the federal government had in mind when they said that remote ID will bring security. No, it's shooting yourself in the foot by creating a technology that is flawed from the outset. And how's it flawed? Well, usually when you want to create something that is not going to be spoofed or forged or faked, you use an electronic signature, a special cryptographic key that only a legitimate transmitter can produce, because that algorithm is carefully guarded. And so by doing that, each packet of remote ID data would have this cryptographic key that must match. And if it doesn't match, then it can be discarded. So when someone builds a piece of spoofing equipment and they don't have access to that special encryption algorithm, or the key required to produce that encryption token, then any equipment that picks up remote ID signals can quickly say, this is a spoofed packet, we will ignore it. It's not real. And therefore all those ghost drones would disappear in the blink of an eye. But the federal government doesn't seem to understand what it's doing. And they chose a standard they chose to implement a standard which doesn't mandate the use of cryptographic signatures. So they have opened the door to this disruption that anybody with an Arduino and a few extra components from AliExpress and a homemade antenna can wreak on an international airport from 10 to 15 miles away. Will it happen? I don't know. I really don't know. But I know that there are some people out there who might want it to happen. If we look at what's happened recently in the UK, an environmental group called Extinction Rebellion, they said they were going to fly drones off the end of Heathrow runway to disrupt air services. They're prepared to put their own liberty at risk. They were prepared to stand up and say, we're going to do this. And in fact, they were arrested for, claiming to be going to fly drones off the end of a runway. Then we have another environmental group in Germany, broke into an airport. That's a crime in itself. Broke through a secure fence into an airport and painted a jet with orange paint. That's another crime. But they were prepared to do that, and they get caught, and they go to jail because they believe in their cause. So given easier options, such as spoofing a remote ID signal from 15 miles away, you can bet that they will be looking very carefully at this as an option for disrupting aviation services, because they see aviation as a major polluter. They use a lot of fuel, a lot of carbon into the atmosphere. They see it as their mission to protect the world from aircraft. So I can see either of those groups and other groups, environmental groups, seeing this as a great way to make a statement in a way that doesn't actually doesn't put their liberty at risk at all. They're doing it from the safety of a long distance where they won't be caught. It's a real worry. It's a very, very real worry. And it's just one of the many problems that remote ID is creating whilst solving nothing. This is a solution to a problem that doesn't really exist. But in solving this problem, the federal government has created such a huge vulnerability that something will have to change. And coming up will be a video along these lines addressing the media, because I've used a lot of stuff here that people in the hobby would understand. But when we do a video for the media, we have to take it from a perspective of no understanding, no knowledge of what we're talking about. So it's going to be a little bit simplified, and graphics and pictures and everything, so it's easy to understand, to explain to the media exactly what the vulnerability is, how easily it is exploited, and why this remote ID is effectively the US federal government shooting itself in the foot and potentially crippling the aviation industry. That's our next step in this little campaign, so stay tuned. I'd like to thank the many people who have kindly supported me through Patreon and through memberships of this channel. Times are tight. Everyone is trying to make every penny stretch. So those who have decided to support the hobby by empowering me to make videos like this and to get these initiatives, get these balls rolling, I thank you. The hobby thanks you. And stay tuned. That video for the media will be out shortly. I'm doing some graphics and stuff. Has to be very easy and simple to understand. So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Graphics, VFX. And then it'll be up for you guys to review and tell me what you think. And then we'll roll it out to the media, and hopefully we'll see some changes. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Bye for now.
Overregulation is like a tumor. It's killing our hobby. It must be terminated. Now!